So
Yeah,
yes,
I'm here.
Okay.
I got it.
Well, well, super. There's a lot of folks on with us, and Jenny, in lieu of our hour that we have, I figure what we'll do is just kind of let me introduce our side, and then we'll kind of jump into this. And I want to make sure everybody has time to see our presentation that we've put together, and then of course jump in and ask any questions for those that have them. So a lot of new names and faces. Really good to see all of you. I'll just introduce myself real quick. Scott Steinert from the NiCE team. I work with James and the rest of those folks in regards to the contact center and other solutions that we're providing. Mark Ryan is my solutions PSE, as they call them, so sales engineer, solutions engineer. Scott Carnup is our solutions architect who's joining. The presenters, and really the reason why, folks, we're all together is to share with you what we have built with our friends over at SpinSci, which is really an integration to create a great experience with your Epic environment. We have an extensive healthcare portfolio, right? We've got a giant healthcare vertical with some of the largest healthcare providers in the world. And you guys being kind of considered between that healthcare management and healthcare operations certainly have an Epic environment that's suitable to what SpinSci has done. And it really gives the agents an experience that allows them to do all the functionality within Epic and a lot more. So our goal of getting together today was to share with you what things are capable, what's really the art of possible with the environment or the experience your agents want to have. So we've got an hour. I want to make sure we get through the demonstration, we get through questions and answers. I'm going to turn it over to Forrest and Andres from SpinSci. Let Forrest, you kind of introduce SpinSci, how you've grown to be where you are with the NiCE relationship, and let you take it away from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody. My name's Forrest Salisbury. I am our Vice President of Sales here at SpinSci. I've been here for about 8 years now. And fun fact about me is I actually come from a healthcare operations background. So my first big boy job after graduating at Texas Tech was at a private duty nursing home health provider for pediatrics. And so started out at the ground level, managing about 30 families personally and their schedules, and then ultimately worked my way to running that office. And we serviced about 500 kiddos here in the North Dallas area. So I did transition to the tech space, and it's been an awesome journey here with SpinSci. Alongside me, I do have Andres. I think he was held up on just another customer conversation we were on. He'll probably be here in a couple minutes, but Andres is a member of my team, and he works directly with NiCE and ensures that all the cool things that SpinSci does is natively and directly tied to all the cool things that NiCE has from a product and functionality perspective. So realistically, I'll jump right into it. I am a slides guy to complement what I'm talking through, and we have some cool live stuff to show you as well. So I promise it's not all PowerPoint slides. Realistically, to Scott's point, for those of you who don't know about SpinSci, I won't bore you from our inception to date, but what I will tell you is, we were born in the contact center space. We worked through all kinds of use cases and workflows that ultimately led to us realizing, hey, we want to be a healthcare only focused company, right? And that was about a decade ago when we doubled down in the healthcare vertical. When I first joined SpinSci, funny enough, the home health company I worked for was named Epic Health Services. So I think our CIO, when I met him, thought I came from Epic. I did explain that it's a little different, but point remains that when I first got here, we had about a half a dozen customers that trusted us with their Epic integration. And 8 years later, we're at well over 100 plus. I think this is even an older number. We're probably closer to 175 now, both from a SMB and enterprise strategic full spectrum of customer bases that we work with. the mom and pop shops with only a few folks, all the way up to, the UHGs of the world with thousands of people. So, um, we have tons of workflows that are deployed there. And the reason why I call that out is, and why I think that's relevant to this conversation and to you is, you guys have a lot of options when you go to Epic Showroom. You'll find Spenside there as well. And I think where Spenside really differentiates our place in this market is we're focused on end-to-end connected patient journey, right? I know that there's been some investments made with Poly AI, which is awesome. We love those guys over there. And so we have our own products and things that we can connect to, right? So, and we'll get kind of more into the weeds on that here in a second. But realistically, last 10 years, healthcare only. We have hundreds of millions of interactions with our products specific to Epic. We're big, NiCE partners. All the things that we're going to talk about and that you'll see today are leveraging NiCE native products and interoperating with Epic. One other key call out that I wanted to make, just based off of you guys and what your investments are in, is we're also Salesforce Health Cloud partners, because I understand that there's some level of data being managed and workflows owned in Salesforce as well. And so we'll kind of talk through, hey, what could the world look like where all of these things are talking to each other and you're not necessarily having to maintain two different systems of record and things like that as well. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions about us, and then I'll kind of get into the world of, what we have and what I think would really benefit you.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Ola. I work with PDS as the Salesforce manager. Just a quick clarifying question for Spinsci. Is it an integration layer or is it a platform?
That's a great question. So we like to think of it as a platform because it's basically an omni integration layer, right? The way spin size packaged products work, essentially, and that's a great segue into the next slide, is we essentially, after working with these hundreds of customers, have come to the realization that there's a lot of problems that a lot of people face, and it's almost patterned. I mean, every health system is a snowflake in the sense that the different tech stacks that they've chosen to implement and things of that nature aren't always the same, but a lot of the problems that they face are. And so what Spensai has done is essentially packaged up these different workflows and applications and made these pre-packaged applications and integrations to solve those problems, those common problems. And so I think just from the top, I won't touch on this one too much because I know of the investment of Poly AI. And so essentially the same things that you guys are trying and working to accomplish with them in terms of, authenticating who I'm talking to against their record, rescheduling their appointment, or potentially helping them with self-service pre-person, right? Our product for that is called Patient Engage. We're not going to talk about that much, but the reason why that's important to bring up is because the other products that we have um, connect the dots from that self-service experience to your humans. And so we'll be able to make that same connection, even if it's not our Patient Engage product. We've done it with other AI platforms like Avamo or others, et cetera. So Poly's one of those that we can definitely connect the dots with. And Patient Assist is kind of that thing that we're going to focus on today, right? Patient Assist is what happens after somebody, calls in, authenticates, tries to reschedule or take action, but then they're like, you know what, I need to talk to somebody, right? So that handoff from your virtual agent workforce, Poly, to your live agent, how do we synonymously continue that experience in a way that the agent isn't starting from ground zero trying to figure out who am I talking to and why are they calling me? And from a patient experience, it's like, hey, I authenticated myself and you're still, you're having to look me up, right? How do we eliminate that problem and that clunky experience? That's what Patient Assist does, right? Essentially, it's passing that baton from your virtual agent to your live agent. We have a really cool UI, and we'll talk through that in the live demo of essentially how can we best inform you? As soon as you answer that call, you'll know that this is Forrest. Here's his upcoming appointments. I'm in Epic faster, and I'm taking care of the workflow. And it's a better patient experience. The last thing that I'll call out here, because I knew there was some interest around the outbound aspect as well, is we talked about the inbound self-service. We talked about the connected human experience when I'm talking to a person on the phone. Spensai also has heavy investments in the outbound strategies for health systems as well, in terms of how can we generate real-time appointment reminders when an appointment gets put into Epic, right? Just creating that connective tissue to where you do your job, we help you set up the interface systems and the campaigns. And then as soon as that appointment gets put into Epic, that becomes a real-time trigger for your outreach, right? We also have other modalities of integration from an outbound perspective. We work heavily with, work queues and other file type, ad hoc campaigns. But realistically, how do we help you not have to call people? We'll do the calling and texting for you. And then if somebody does need connected back to a person, we'll manage that connection back to that agent in or that person in the office, and then they get their patient assist pop that says, hey, we called Forrest about this appointment, and they have all the information. It's kind of a cyclical thing, which is why it's a cyclical triangle. The final last thing that I'll say is Spensai has made investments in these platforms, and then we've packaged them to be relevant in all the different spaces of healthcare, right? So I know I heavily focused on appointment setting just based off of who I'm talking to, but we have tailored products and use cases for the rev cycle side of the house. And, we work with payers and health plans. And we also do, prescription refills and all kinds of like medical type workflows. So I know we'll probably heavily focus on the scheduling aspect, but just want to pause there and see if there's any questions up to this point about our footprint and why we're relevant and how we're helping others.
Hey, Forrest, if there's no questions from the PDS side, I'm curious, and I'll kind of direct this to everybody on the Epic team. How much of the agent's time today is spent between in Epic and working through patient interactions?
Probably 90%.
In the
It's the system that they're using for everything at the office level. We only have a couple other pieces that bounce out, but
Okay.
yeah, no, it is the workflow system for our end users at the offices.
That's
Okay.
awesome. Which
Yeah.
which modules are you guys using specifically? I'd imagine Cadence and for appointments and all of that. Are you guys looking at
Yeah,
Epic Choose as well, or?
all the standards. So Cadence, Prelude, Ambulatory, Wisdom, professional billing, claims. I think you were saying Cheers or campaigns?
Yeah,
Did you
I was
mention
just
that?
asking. I know it's a common one. That's why I brought it up.
Okay, yeah. So we are not using Cheers or campaigns at the moment.
Okay, sure, no worries. No, that's all helpful information. Was there any other questions, Scott, that came to mind, or?
Yeah, I'm curious too if the agents today that are between NiCE and Epic, there's not really an integration. So are they mostly running their
So-
screens side by side?
Okay, so we're talking at the office level. They don't use anything except Epic. So
Nothing
there's
today,
no
yeah.
NiCE. Okay. So
Yeah.
the only difference and where the question comes into play, where our office users are using Epic 90% of their day, like this is the system that they use all day long for everything they do. At the contact center, so our agents, again, the way our structure is set up, we have 1,100 uniquely owned dental and medical practices. Our
Mhm.
contact center supports those offices in a rollover mode, saying they don't pick up and the call rolls over to them either during business hours or outside of business hours. At that point, the user at the contact center probably uses Epic 50% of their workflow. The
Sure.
other percentiles of their workflow are obviously with our CRM, in working with Box, working with files, grabbing onboarding information,
Mhm.
I would say knowledge management,
Mhm.
scheduling policies, all of those things are in many different places. So they're probably a 50-50 on of like system what they're using to do their job.
Sure. So I would
Yep.
say, no, that's helpful.
And we're
From
knee deep in some work with NiCE on agent assist and some other pieces that we're implementing just at the contact center for our contact center users. So we're knee deep in that with them as well right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that makes perfect sense. So let's say at the 1100 unique clinic or office locations, majority of the time is spent in Epic, and that is doing what exactly? Like, or not what exactly, but like I'd imagine it's revolving around somebody called and they can't make it, so they have to reschedule them, or
Yeah, they're
uh,
handling everything
and
from
they're doing outbound as well, maybe like
they are.
follow-up calls and
Yep,
things like
follow-up
that.
calls out of the work queues. We have some follow-up work queues that we're working out of within Epic, and they're making
Okay.
outbound calls for that. Obviously, all the inbound calls, which are from a myriad of things, 70% of our calls that come in on a daily are for scheduling,
Yep.
either scheduling, rescheduling, or canceling, those sorts of things. And then the rest are just miscellaneous things. They also have a lot of, I mean, their workflow is not just phone based. They're literally working with patients from start to finish as they come into the office. So check in, check out, all these processes they're handling at the office throughout the day too. So,
Sure.
yep.
Yep.
No, that makes perfect sense. Um, any other questions you had, Scott?
No, that's great. Thanks for clarifying, Jenny, because I know we are talking at the clinic level for
Mhm.
this integration, but
Yes,
of
Yep.
course, all of the NiCE contact center agents could absolutely have that similar experience. So I think appreciate you clarifying.
yeah,
So yeah,
yep.
Forrest, go right ahead.
Yep, absolutely. No, I think that's really helpful information. And uh, what I'll say before we jump into like this live demonstration is the way that Patient Assist has been built. Essentially, you have kind of free reign over how much or how little you want to exist with the phone system, right? So, like, we have folks that have implemented this, and essentially, it's just that connective tissue, what we call silent gadget, but it's just that connective tissue to where when someone calls in, how do we get you into appointment desk, as soon as you answer the phone, essentially for that person? Because if you're working in Epic, you probably don't want
Bingo.
any other
Yep.
things distracting you for that, right?
A
And
hundred
so
percent. Yep.
100%. And so
That's it.
we can talk through that 100%. Some of the other layered aspects of this is, there has been some benefit found, and I'll share a screenshot before actually jumping into a live demonstration. Let me make this bigger for everybody. Essentially, you do have the option to um, pull in different information sets into your screen as you answer the phone and initialize that auto pop to a specific Epic module. And realistically, the reason why customers are opting to invest in this is because this essentially allows you to pull in information, collected by Poly per se, right? Like, let's say this person already authenticated, they provided some level of intent. How can we take that information that's collected before they get to your desk and then memorialize it in a way that's meaningful to your agent when they answer the phone, right? So that way they're given a handshake from the virtual agent to the live agent. And additionally, how can we pull in information from all these different modules of Epic to create a single pane of information that arms you with all the helpful things, right? I'm going to pause here and actually, we're going to pull up the live demonstration so you can see how this works. And then I'll talk to it a little bit more in depth of essentially how this is your canvas and your ability to paint the most relevant picture about who's on the other end of the phone. So, and keep in mind, as we're doing this, this is not a means to replace or eliminate Epic. It's essentially how can we better arm your folks in the clinic to understand who this person is and get to their, appointment desk or wherever, whatever module for this patient you want to be in faster, right? expedite that verification process and then get you into Epic faster to do your workflow, so you're not spending so much time fumbling through. So what we'll go ahead and do is Andres here, he's logged in as a CX1 agent, right? This is NiCE's desktop phone. I'm sure you've seen this before and are well aware of it. We have a tool that essentially lives within this platform where whenever we place a call, in this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to just skip self-service, right? We're going to bypass any authentication or deeper self-service. And we're just going to get transferred to an agent, right? And we'll show you kind of what that experience looks like now.
And while you're pulling that up, let me just summarize what that call flow looks like. So if the call came in for a clinic, NiCE sends that to Polly. Polly attempts to self-serve. And if it can't, we'll send it back to NiCE that will deliver it to your agent at the clinic. And that would be somebody that's logged in into their NiCE agent license. And we have a single sign-on with the SpinSci. So all that integration on the back end is already scheduled. It's set up. So they're going to have that experience when they click and accept that call. So, Forrest.
Yep, absolutely. So as you can see here, I'm logged in as an agent. I have my skill types, all of those things. I've just received a call. We completely bypassed all self-service. So there was no variables to pass. There was no, MRN or date of birth or anything to get a single identifier. But instead, what we're still able to do to support you in this instance is we'll do a quick patient lookup for you, right? So using the phone number of the patient, what you're seeing here is essentially what we call a multi-match. We're pulling in, the patient name, the date of birth, their location. These are all demographic details that exist in that patient's record, right? So it's pulled in real time. Depending on what your SOP is to verify who you're talking to, some people use last four of social, some people use MRN, et cetera. As long as it's a demographic detail in Epic, we can memorialize it here in one of these columns for you. Um, Best practice from Epic is to verify the source and the subject of the call. The source is the person who you're talking to on the phone. The subject is the patient of interest, right? So, what you're seeing is the Cadence family, and the folks that are all associated to this number. If I'm calling in to schedule an appointment for my daughter, I'm the source, but my daughter's the subject, right? She's the patient of interest. Whereas if I'm calling about myself, then I'm both. In this example, we're just going to say that Anna Cadence is calling about herself, right? So she gave us her date of birth and zip code. So we're going to click her as the source and subject. And then essentially what's going to happen here is a few different things, right? You're going to see that immediate boom, Epic screen pop successfully initiated. This is our first opportunity to just immediately launch into Appointment Desk if that's the landing page that you want to hit, right? But essentially we can configure a immediate landing page, or what we call auto pops, for the patient that you just clicked, right? So I clicked Anna Cadence as the subject. This would initialize Anna Cadence's Appointment Desk being launched in your hyperdrive, right? Because it's all connected tissue between the phone and Epic. Additionally, and this kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier about you can choose to implement as much or as least amount of information in the phone system. But realistically, what we have here, and I'm a metaphor person, I come back to uh, this being a canvas, right? This is your opportunity to paint a picture of Anna Cadence and give you helpful information about her. All these different cards essentially are tying to different data elements or modules of Epic. And it can also be tied to different data modules of Salesforce as well. Like if there's information that you care about from that back end as well, we can kind of bring it all into a single pane. Some of these cards you're seeing here is obviously just like demographic information about the person. The main call out I wanted to give you though is that now you see this verified match criteria checkbox associated to them. If for whatever reason this call needed to be transferred to somebody, you would transfer that authentication status with it. So the person receiving that transfer would just completely bypass the patient identity validation that this person did. And in addition to that, if Anna Cadence successfully authenticated herself with Polly, then we could pass that authentication status and skip the authentication process that we just saw a moment ago that way as well. I'll pause there and see if there's any questions. There's more information as we scroll, but I just want to make sure I'm giving an opportunity for questions up to this point.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you. Two things. Well, one, you mentioned the source of truth for the patient information being Epic. Is
Yep.
there opportunity for other sources of truth to get patient details, or is it specifically just Epic?
No, 1,000%. That's a great question. So Epic typically is the primary source of truth. However, we have customers who've made investments in like Salesforce or even through like acquisition. Some customers have Epic and Athena and ECW, multi EHRs. We are not limited to just one source of truth, right? These cards can be tied to different back ends, and there's ways that we can tailor that information so hey, this is the information from Epic, this is the information from backend B, right? And the same way that we initialize what we call screen pop to appointment desk in Epic, you can actually like screen pop to a case in ServiceNow or information in a CRM encounter in Salesforce or something like that too.
Okay, just to clarify around the screen pop thing, because part of the issues we're trying to reduce is to reduce the application swivel, like the number of applications that the agents are looking into. So you mentioned screen pop. So are you saying that you're able to get like a screen pop, like a widget in Epic to pop up with this details? Does that show in Epic, or does the agent have to be in the CX1 interface?
That's a good question. So realistically, the way it works is this information that you're seeing right now is tied to our Epic data, our test patients, right? And so if you wanted to go to appointment desk at the beginning of the call, and whenever you click the subject of the caller,
Mhm.
we can initialize a screen pop to Epic proper, right? Hyperdrive. And so we can launch into Anna Cadence's appointment desk or her account summary for Resolute or what have you, right? Like we can tailor it depending on how you want it to work. In addition to that, we also have other screen pop buttons, right? So if you, Dre, if you click that hamburger menu at the top right next to the magnifying glass, essentially we have ways to embed multiple buttons within this view of hey, I want to go look at their referrals, or I want to do a refill encounter, or jump over to a telephone encounter or a patient snapshot or whatever, right? So not only are you launching that module of Epic, that tab, but also you're carrying over the patient context, so it's like this is Anna Cadence's snapshot. You're not gonna have to re-look them up in Epic. So it carries the
I do want
context
to
of who this is as well.
I do just want to call out that what they're showing us here is an example. It's
Mhm.
not the dictated way anything would work. The point is really that you can pull in from Epic, pop to Epic, grab data, push data from multiple sources. So there's nothing that you're going to see here that's sort of written in stone as much
Got it.
as an ideation of how you could start to look at implementing something. So if you looked at this and you said, I would never want the patient card up there, great, right? We know what our hours and clinic number is. We don't want that window, no problem. But you want
Yep.
something from Salesforce written there, cool, we could do that. So it just keep in mind that it's not a dictation. It's an art of the possible and really just around what could be and just to get the ideas going.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Thanks,
James.
James. That's helpful. Oh, sorry.
I think we're
Um,
going to say the same thing, actually. No, I'm glad you called it out that way. So this is essentially kind of like a templated view of, things that we have deployed. But again, this comes back to being the canvas of what you think is most relevant, right? So if you scroll down, Andres, you'll see there's tons of other cards that we have, right? All of these are tied to different modules of Epic or other backends, to the prior question, right? If you want to pull in any upcoming appointments or pending referrals or past due balances, we even have a map tool that you can embed and show different, their preferred pharmacy location or the other clinics around you, et cetera. pull in, and all of this information is just coming either from Epic or potentially other backends as well. And to James's point, right, like these are all microservice cards where you get to pick, like, I want my agents to see A, B, C, but not D, E, but maybe F is helpful, right? And it's essentially what do you want to know about this person, either that's collected by AI, exists in Epic, potentially exists in Salesforce or other places, and present that to you on a single screen. And then if you do have the ability to, and I heard the question earlier, like, hey, uh, do I work here or do I go to Epic, right? Uh, you have choices. So realistically, like if you go to the appointments tab here, I'll give you an example, just as another view, right? We can pull in information. You can leverage this as read-only information. One click of a button, you're opening appointment desk. But we also have the ability to embed actions in here as well. And some of our customers have implemented it in a way where they've come to us and said, Spensai, realistically, I don't even want to go to the EHR right now. Like if it's a certain action that I just want to be done with it. Can you push information back to Epic instead of just reading information from Epic? And the answer is yes, right? You don't have to do that. You're not boxed into that, but you do have the option to bake in actions as well, where if you wanted to cancel the appointment from this view, we can tie into your different appointment cancellation reasons and push this information back to Epic and cancel the appointment the same way it would be done, in appointment desk. So some people are
Forrest, I have
Go
a
ahead.
couple quick questions. Sorry. So this is Dominique from the Epic team on the PDS side. So I guess kind of going back to the screen of with the cards and kind of referencing back of the appointment pop-up desk. So that does make sense in my mind. And I have Josh from my team on the call as well. So I think it's going to be really seeing exactly what those, and again, technical, right? Of like what
Mhm.
those APIs calls that you guys are going to look for. So if
Sure.
we're validating based on patient name, phone number, like all of those distinct APIs that you guys would be needing to in order to actually have that appointment desk pop up for that patient. Like that would be interesting to see. I do have some concerns on, and I know James, you had called it out. This is just kind of all the possibilities, right? But more of like the PHI level stuff of like the
Mhm.
clinical items that were included on here. I'm not sure if we would want, hypertension or other clinical pieces on this
Sure.
platform. But again,
Yeah, I
I'll
mean,
be leaning on the team.
at first pass, right? This could be as simple as telling the person at the
Who's
office
calling?
who's
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
calling,
I
who's
think
why
calling.
they're
I'll
I
be
think we
calling,
would
honest,
want it to be
and
like
that's it.
very simple.
from my
Yeah.
perspective, and James and I have already talked about it, a robust card for us at the content or at the office level doesn't make much sense.
Sure.
What makes sense is passing the identifying information over and getting them into appointment desk as quickly as possible to do what they need to do or wherever they need to go to do that action. That
Mhm.
makes the most sense for us. Too much information for them is like it could be like, I mean,
Operationally challenging. I
way
mean,
too much. Yeah, like it could stifle them. I think it could put them into like a world of just overkill,
where do I
right?
do my
We
job?
know,
Yeah.
and again, we know the just saying this out loud, our offices are much more efficient than our contact center, and the contact center has much more information than our offices. I know it sounds crazy, but at the office level, their day to day is just dealing with these patients. They know them, they know the workflows.
Laser
It's
focused.
very repetitive, right? They're doing the
Mhm.
same things over and over and over again. It's just so for me, the value in giving them the information as to who's calling, being able to validate that information and do that demographic, check on it, and then being able to pass the information as to why they're calling through. And that's really the value at the office. Otherwise, it just
Sure.
becomes too convoluted and confusing for them. It's just another screen. And since they live in Epic, I don't want another screen.
No, and I respect that fully. And there's plenty of customers that hold that same sentiment, especially
Okay.
at the clinic level, right? The beauty behind this tool is from a licensing perspective, you get a patient assist license. You get to pick what lives or doesn't live on your canvas. And then the really cool thing is, um, you're not restricted to just one painting, if you will, right? Like we have the ability to tailor the views, tailor the experience that
The
happens
users.
at the agent skill level.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
like you can create skills, and that's typically what happens in the access center level, right? Like you have pods of schedulers, pods of revenue cycle folks, pods of referrals and outbound folks, and they get their own tailored view and experience because if I'm a rev cycle person, I want to auto pop to the account summary, not to appointment desk, right? So you have the ability to dictate that, and we can create, the clinic level view. Now, to the prior question, I don't want to step over it, from Dominique, is we actually have an Epic implementation guide and a Galaxy guide that walks through like, hey, these are all the interfaces and APIs that you would need and all the resources that we would use. However, so that guide is very descriptive and it kind of walks through the full art of the possible. We would have to dictate the scope of what we wanted to do, right? And it sounds like we're kind of already doing that in the terms of, hey, I just want the patient identifiers and the demographic details and the screen pops to, XYZ landing page, which would be an activity code, right, or descriptor. And realistically, the less that we involve bringing in information, the less APIs and interfaces necessary, right? So,
And
Yeah.
because we
And
can't oh, sorry, go ahead, Jen.
oh, I was just gonna say, so I think that's helpful of having that guide because I think in our minds from the Epic side, and you had mentioned Cheers on that being that call management module, right? From the Epic piece, and this is the CTI that would sit on top of it. So like without having Cheers, trying to kind of get a better understanding of what that integration would look like without
sure.
that call management module, right? So it is going to be custom, or not, maybe not custom, but it is going to be creating those APIs and working with you in order to trigger that appointment desk. And that means bypassing our appointment search because that is a normal step in the process, right? You search a patient, you have to verify it and before you get to that next place. So this is bypassing that. And so, yeah, I think the guide will be really helpful for us. And James is familiar with kind of like API calls, cost, and all that kind of stuff. So that can kind of come further down the line.
And I'll
James, were you going to say something?
oh yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, you know, I think this is all great conversation and it's exciting stuff. And I think, because we get to define it, if it's something really simple where it's here's who's calling in, here's what they talked to about Poly I, here's the last interaction they had with the contact center because we pulled it out of Salesforce and a button to click into Epic right to that patient's page or an automatic, great. And if it's something less than that, cool. And if it's something more than that, that's even cool. But yeah, however we want to shape that, like even the patient search piece, right? If Poly AI is already doing some of that and we're just using this as a way to get straight into Epic, we can talk about even how we wanted to approach that. So there's not to reuse a bad adage, but dozens of ways to skin this cat, right? It's just how we want to do it is how we will do it. We just get to decide it, which is the exciting part.
Yep. No, I appreciate that, James. And I think it just kind of calls back to that prior question of like, is this just a integration or a platform, right? Because at the end of the day, you get to pick the way that it's going to go. Well, and realistically, I will say this. Well, number one, we'll share the implementation guide as a next step so you can kind of come through that. Additionally, there's a few other components that we wanted to talk about. I know we're not more than halfway done. So a couple of the things that we wanted to talk about as well kind of revolves around the post call work that you have. And so my question is, are you guys, and here I'll re-still the ball, Dre. So you kind of got the patient assist flavor. You understand that it can be as much or as little information, whatever you think is helpful at the skill-based level, right? So if at the clinic level, we just want to do patient identification validation and initialize a pop to appointment desk, done deal, right? And then maybe the walk is with the access center and they get their own views and different screen pops or whatever that path is, right? Um, from a post call perspective, I'd imagine, are you guys, tracking telephone encounters and things like that from documenting like, hey, I just talked to patient Forrest and helped him reschedule or not really, or
Where, no, I'd love to tell you we are, but it does not happen at the office level that often. No.
Sure. And I'd
Yeah.
imagine it's just because I'm dealing with people in person
Because they're
and
busy.
phones.
They're busy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
in
and
some of the
here's
slower
something.
offices, they may be documenting those, but it's not across the board. You will not find that in our practices.
Sure. Would that documentation be helpful though, just from like an audit trail perspective? Like if we could help you automate that or?
Yes, it would be awesome if we could automate it. It would totally be beneficial. We're definitely missing it today because I think the way I think of it is from two perspectives. Because at the contact center, we don't use the same system to record it. So the offices don't see the Salesforce information. The Salesforce follow up in the skill and like the processing of that phone call is not documented or dropped into Epic. So there is a gap when they say, oh, I talked to somebody, then we're like, we don't know who they talked to, right?
Right.
So there's definitely a gap in that documentation today cross system. We'd love to, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So
Forrest,
one of
you were referencing a patient call being documented in the NiCE platform or within Epic. I'm sorry, I might have missed that.
within Epic specifically, like as a telephone encounter or a patient note.
Okay.
So, and the reason why I asked, it's a very pointed question. I know with NiCE, Copilot and transcription, part of that product is basically, you know, taking the call information and putting a bow and ribbon on it for a, AI generated automatic summary, right? And so as part of what we wanted to talk through today was just letting you know that that is possible to automate the process of documentation because that's one of the products we have that furthers that connective tissue between NiCE and Epic, where as soon as that summary is generated, we have the ability to create a telephone encounter for that patient and use that summary as the documentation for that encounter. So,
And if you take that a step further, obviously, team, if we have that in Epic, MuleSoft can pull it in Salesforce. If it's written in Salesforce, that can be pushed back to Epic, right? So that gives us the ability to combine those records across the systems and sync them. So the contact center and the clinic or office could both have a full view of all the interactions, what happened and when.
yep, that's a good call out. And honestly, we wouldn't even be necessarily limited to only pushing it as a telephone encounter as well. If there's some value in potentially pushing it as like a CRM interaction in Salesforce as well, to your point. Um, So I'll pause there and see. I know I'm a question guy. I like to make it conversational, and I like that we're going back and forth. There's actually another thing I wanted to address as well, but I want to see if there's anything on y'all's mind.
I mean, I have tons of questions on creating the encounter, but we don't have enough time for that. Just thinking about all the specific things we require for an encounter. So like if it's going to be associated to an office or a provider, when they are doing that documentation, like how is that getting pulled in? So yeah, a lot of questions, but I'm sure, as we go down the line working with Jenny and Sarah and our comms team, we can figure out where that lives.
Yep,
Yeah, I
100%.
agree. Because I don't think it would ever be an automatic thing that we would want to create. Because if it was a reschedule of an appointment and they took care of that thing, we don't need a telephone encounter for that, right? So I think it would almost be like if it did require some documentation and the user decided that, then it could pop them into the current telephone encounter workflow so that we could get those specifics, like Dominique said.
And if there were ever a grievance, what type of records would we want to store for those grievance encounters to be able to show when we talk to the patient about what or things like that? Like would there be value from even that standpoint to have some of that back end tracking logged somewhere matter to us?
Yeah, and
I
I'll
mean,
just
if we
kinda-
get to grievance, there's probably been a whole lot more going on than a phone call to the office with a screen pop. So
No, yeah.
typically the manager and clinician are documenting within like office visits when that patient's in the practice, within the notes, working with patient relations. So there's a lot to that. There's a lot that happens prior to a grievance.
Fair.
And
No,
then
that
Forrest, where does the reporting pieces come into play? So like when we're So like the reporting specs that the team would need to kind of see, okay, well, how many were able to get taken care of either through the NiCE platform or was there a disconnect, or I'm not as familiar with some of your reporting specs that you guys use today. And then with the integration with Poly AI, does the reporting piece live on their side?
Sure. No, it's a great question. I think it's a good segue to this.
I
I'll
did that on
say,
purpose.
no, you're
See?
good. It's a dumb sales guy's version of architecture here. Like I said, I came from healthcare ops. It's funny actually. In my interview here, they asked me how I felt about Cisco at the time, and I was like, oh, I love those guys. They brought me food at my Boy Scout summer camp, and it's not even the right Cisco. So, um, but point is, this is a high level architecture which does feed into reporting. So essentially, like how this is powered, how we can make all this stuff happen, how can we make these things work? We have what's called an Agenta server. It's a HIE platform, Mirth under the hood. It's essentially a cloud-based middleware that will connect to all the components of NiCE, all the components of Poly, all the components of Epic, potentially all the components of Salesforce, and it would be that data exchange layer to power these packaged products, right? So essentially, from a reporting perspective, what Spensai can provide is obviously, inbound requests that were received, successful screen pops, things of that nature. There is nice native reporting as well around, call volumes and things of that nature. But we definitely work together to kind of marry information. Spensai does also use QuickSight reports for other projects, from like take a outbound use case perspective, right? We've integrated to work queues so that way people aren't having to call themselves. We can create a campaign call for you. If they don't answer, leave the voicemail for you. If they do answer, get you connected to the person in the clinic. And then we can report on, how many files did we ingest, how many calls were made, what was the outcome of that call, and we can actually memorialize that data back into Epic with like a Cal 2000 report. So we'll write back to Epic and say, hey, we called patient Forrest and left a voicemail, or we called, patient Scott and it was a busy tone, or whatever that outcome was.
Of course, before we jump, I just wanted to touch base on one thing, just to make sure we called it out. Was there was that silent option where if we don't want any of those dashboards and we don't want to leverage that, we could just pop the call straight into like the call. We open up the patient record in Epic and they start talking, right? So we could bypass all of that. Just wanted to make sure everybody had heard that part earlier. That's also an option.
Yep.
So this is sort of really the non-Cheers way of doing this, for most phone companies. I think NiCE and Contact and RingCentral and Vonage and everybody in the market we're talking to right now, if they're not using Cheers, they're using Spensai to accomplish this.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Quick question, what triggers, whether it be the dashboard or whether it be popping them into Epic and opening the chart? Is it like the actual
That's our
answering of
choice.
the call?
Yeah, the actual answering of the call.
And
But,
we would choose
yeah.
that, Sarah. We would
You
code
can
that,
define
and yeah, we would do that ourselves.
I'm just thinking about at the office level, the amount of multitasking they're typically doing. So if I'm taking a payment for a patient in front of me and I pick up a call, the screen in Epic might be, depending on how many tabs they have, like there's a lot of
Yeah.
factors that could be there because it isn't
Sure.
one person that's answering calls like an agent at a contact center. So we would
Very
have to
much
take
so.
that into an account.
It could be something, Sarah, as simple as if that person is wearing a headset and they're the agent, they could tap the headset to accept the call, walk over to their machine where they're logged in, and that Epic screenshot is waiting for them. And they can start that conversation immediately and have all that information right there. So
Scott, what she's saying though is at the office level,
Mhm.
we're usually have a patient in front of us and we may be working in a workflow where we don't want something to pop over that workflow. So there's a lot of times where there's a patient at the front counter who may be checking out and we're transacting a payment. We have to make sure that if they accept the call, which they probably have to, and
Mhm.
stay in that same instance of Epic. How do we eliminate it from doing the action if they're already doing something? And I'm sure, Forrest, you have a way of doing that.
Yep. No,
I think that's where the
Delayed
Where it's
pop
kind
or
of like
something.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we can
I hear the use
configure
case
that
loud
based
and
on,
clear.
okay.
So just as I'm a back brief guy, I'm also I'm in the National Guard, and they're very heavy on you got to brief at the lowest level and then make them brief you back. Otherwise, you didn't successfully give the information. So um what I'm hearing is at the clinic level, you may be working with someone face to face, right? And oftentimes this is why contact centers exist, right? So that way, that's what you focus on mostly, right? But if you are still taking calls, if I'm helping someone take a payment and then I answer the phone, the last thing I want to do is launch over to patient B's appointment desk while I'm helping patient A in front of me's bill pay, right? So there are configurations that we can do. Number one, it does open a new tab, right? So you could just tab back to where you were, or we can turn off the auto pop, right? Basically, we make the screen pop to appointment desk a uh, open appointment desk button, like you saw in the dashboard, right? But realistically, at its core, when you answer the phone, that auto pop doesn't would only initialize without you clicking something if they already successfully authenticated in Poly, which I don't know what those metrics are. I'd hope they're over half, right? Realistically, from an authenticated perspective. But that trigger to initiate the pop to appointment desk is you clicking who you're talking to in NiCE, right? So if you don't do that, then that's not a problem. But at the end of the day, we do have the ability to not do an auto pop and just have it be you click who you're talking to and then you click open appointment desk or open patient snapshot, right? That little hamburger menu, you can pick, like you can have multiple screen pop locations for that same patient. You know what I mean?
Yep. Thanks for
Yeah.
explaining that. That's
Yep,
helpful.
100%. No, that's a valid use case. I think one last thing I did want to touch on from helping you out. I know I kind of hit on the, automated dialing perspective. We also have click to call available as well, right? So we can enable all the things we talked about from an incoming and screen pop perspective falls under the umbrella of inbound CTI. We also have outgoing CTI integrations where essentially you click the patient's number in Epic and you're dialing them on your nice phone. So just save time from manual dialing and or copy and pasting. I'm sure it's the most common workaround. So I see another hand up.
Yes, not related to the current topic, but I just wanted to confirm. I know you're partnered with Epic and you have all these integration with the APIs and all that good stuff with the standard Epic. For PDS, I believe we have a custom Epic. So I just want to clarify if the level of effort that you anticipate may be required for integrating with our own custom instance of the Epic.
Sure. No, it's a great question. I'd assume it's one instance of Epic, correct, across all of
Correct.
PDS? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, so whether it's customized or not, that's fine. I mean, we've worked with all types of epics, whether it's hosted by, Tegria or something, a hosted instance, a cloud, your own instance. That doesn't necessarily impact our ability to do any of this. So, and from
We're
a,
Epic hosted,
okay,
so
no,
I'm sure
perfect.
you've had customers, yeah.
100%. Yeah. I mean, we were working with Epic back when we had to like get into the Citrix level of things, but now it's way easier with Hyperdrive. So, what version are y'all on, if you don't mind me asking? I'd imagine it's something
Uh,
in the last.
yeah, we just upgraded to May 25.
Okay, perfect. That's a good segue and point that I want to make as well, right? When you invest with Spensai as a partner, we have dedicated Epic TSs to our products. So as part of that, we work together to basically future-proof the integration. And what I mean by that is, APIs change, interfaces change, things in Epic change. We're made aware, they fully understand our products and how they work, and we're made aware well in advance if any changes of call it the next quarterly release of Epic is changing a certain type of API or how it transacts. and we mitigate those changes before those releases are even made consumable to customers. So essentially, you don't have to worry about I upgrade Epic and what I bought breaks. And it's the same perspective from a NiCE side as well as an access center platform.
Yeah, our expectations are about the same. So working with any vendor where we have an integration, which we have a lot of, we would lean on you for getting those updates and helping, validate if we do have any issues on that night of upgrade, making sure that integration after the version change is not broken, being frank, and then determining if we do have troubleshooting issues, what that support looks like from your side is going to be something that we would want to flesh out to make sure we have a good understanding of the support model.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we have our SLAs and everything like that. I know we only have a few minutes left. And honestly, it's a perfect segue into kind of our packaged model, right? You talked about pricing and Epic dips and things like that. The nature of our products, Spensai packages up all the components into licensing that's purchased through NiCE, right? So it's NiCE native price book products. There's two components to what we do. Obviously, the one-time implementation, which is the labor to do things, and then the subscription licensing to power the products. The subscription licensing price is all inclusive of any Epic usage, cloud compute, support, etc. Right? So it's not necessarily a non-forecastable event where there's spikes and other dings and things like that. Realistically, the only use cases that we've seen somebody's Epic bill go up on is if we're doing like MyChart enablement. Obviously, there's a license cost to turning on a new MyChart user. Telehealth use cases also tend to have Epic usage, but all the things that we talked about today, including patient verification, screen pops, click to calls, even doing the automated dialing if that was something you'd want to investigate for campaigns outbound, that would not incur anything outside of what you're paying NiCE and Spensai together.
So we've just got a minute here, folks. Really appreciate your time. Maybe I'll just wrap up and summarize a few things, because I know for many of you, you're seeing the CX1 contact center platform maybe for the first time as well. And with that, there's a lot of capabilities around recording, quality management, etc. Those are all things that Mark and I can kind of table and come back to you to say, hey, now that you've got, let's say, folks at clinics answering these calls, how can we provide data back to you or interaction analysis back to you that's going to be helpful? And then we combine that with what Spensai can do to give you an entire picture of that interaction. Auto summary, we touched upon a little bit, but I think there's a lot of value to be able to memorialize by just, dispositioning the call, clicking to save, and it automatically goes into your Epic card. So that's something we can follow up on as well. So maybe I'll take back as a follow-up, we'll get the recording out, and Forrest and Andres, if we have, let's say, our scoping or discovery information that we want to send out to Jenny and the team to say, guys, we talked about these things, but there's other capabilities that may be of interest, and let you guys consume that, review it, and decide we'd like to review some of these other pieces of Epic that want to be a part of this. And then we can regroup together and provide kind of a deeper dive into what those look like. That may be kind of our second opportunity to get back together and maybe talk through some of those pieces. Jenny, does that make sense for you?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan, Scott.
Okay, super. And then we've provided to James and team pricing that includes everything you saw today. And there's a lot more that we really didn't cover too that could be included in that. So let us do that. We'll circle back here hopefully in the next week or so, but really appreciate everybody's time.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll have a summary email
Forrest,
shortly.
will you send the deck out?
I will absolutely send the deck, and I'll also attach our latest Epic implementation guide as well for Dominique.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you
guys so much.
Thank you.
Have a
It's
great
great to meet you guys. If you're ever in Dallas, give me a ring.
Thanks.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good weekend, guys.
Bye.
Bye.